Hey guys, in this video I'll be going over how I painted the inner frame on the master grade Shin Musha Gundam with emphasis on all the materials I used and how I got rid of the seam in the helmet along with reconstructing the face. Alright, so first up, let's talk about the helmet. As you saw in my last video, there was a mean seam running all the way down here and on top. I even went ahead and posted some before and after pics on Instagram, and I'll throw these up here as well while I'm talking. But what was specifically difficult with this was I didn't know what the seam was going to be as far as being complete until after I primed it. So it took me a couple attempts to do that. The primer that I used was actually a mixture of this Mr. Hobby Mr. Surfacer 1000 and the Mr. Leveling Thinner 400. And I actually just went ahead and used some Tamiya sanding sponges. This is in 1000 grit. That was a finisher going across. There were some scratches and things that were left over, so I went ahead and used Tamiya extra thin cement to go in. But as you can see here on a nice black gloss piece, the seam is gone. That was only part one. Because I put the helmet together the way I did, I still needed to put the face piece back in. So I'm going to cut to a video and show you exactly how I put the helmet back in. And it was a little nerve-wracking just because this was all already painted. The only thing I added after that was together was this gold Aurora film to the back cameras here. And that's really going to tie in the rest of the theme. So let me just show you the video on how I took care of the helmet, because I know that that's something that a lot of you were asking me about, and I really do appreciate the feedback. And then we'll get into how I went ahead and painted the inner frame. So prior to gluing all the pieces together, I went ahead and bored out all the extra plastic connectors that were inside of the helmet. These were the connectors that actually attached to the clear piece that I'm holding now. And I also went ahead and, using my nippers, I cut off all the excess clear plastic. I even cut that in half to make it as thin as possible, knowing that I needed as much space as possible once this piece was finally painted. I then went in with some Tamiya extra thin cement, give a nice generous amount on the inside of the helmet that was able to grip onto the top of the clear piece, just where that camera comes out. I specifically left the poly cap to go in last because that was going to take up a lot of space. This ended up being an extremely frustrating procedure to do on camera, so I had to do it off camera. As you can see, I scratched the paint in a couple places, but don't worry, I ended up masking that off and fixing it. So holding in the face mask would be the next challenge. That was accomplished by using some 1.5 by 1.5 millimeter styrene squares. Those are from Evergreen scale models. I went ahead and just cut to random lengths. The lengths weren't very important, but I went ahead and put some glue on there, gluing it to the base of the helmet and along that clear piece to really just cement those pieces in. I made sure not to keep them too close to the poly cap because I didn't want it to affect articulation. And I can actually say I'm really proud that it doesn't affect the articulation at all. Once it was dried, I went back in there with my nippers and cleaned up as much as possible because I wanted to leave a very small footprint. And again, after it was cut down, went back in and fused it even more using some more extra thin cement, and I let it dry. The only other process that was necessary after that would be adding the V-fin and adding the Aurora film. So I hope this was helpful. And it worked out for me. It's the first time trying it that way, so I'm glad that I got these results. All right, guys, let's go ahead and talk inner frame. So I'm going to try to get a nice close-up if my camera allows me. And if you can focus on this main color here, you'll see that there are some subtle differences. The camera is a little difficult to pick it up. But this main color here, first time I ever use it, it's actually a buffable paint. This darker color here. And in real life, it actually looks like a piece of metal. It looks fantastic. You might be getting like a purple hue from the camera. And I can assure you that it's actually a dark metal. And that's actually Mr. Metal Color Iron. This is a lacquer paint full of warnings on the back, basically just explaining that there is probably real metal particulate here. I also did some research, and they highly recommend that you top coat this sooner than later to avoid any oxidation of that metal flake. Now, this paint actually mixes very well with the Mr. Leveling Thinner. Goes on very flat, very smooth, and afterwards you would buff it with a cloth, or the way that I did was with a cotton swab. And I'm going to show you guys exactly how I did that now. So as I mentioned before, straight out of the airbrush, this paint goes on nice and smooth and flat, and with very little pressure, just using a cotton swab. You can see how easy it is to get that shine, to get that buff. And I wanted to specifically show you the back piece because there are all those extra details and lines, and it gives you that depth of field, and that's exactly what I was going for. I could have easily used a cotton ball and got a smoother finish, but this kind of gives a more realistic metallic look. I definitely recommend using gloves because while you're buffing it, some of the flake can get on your fingers, and not only that, you can leave fingerprints in that final finish, which you don't want to have after clear coating it. So if you haven't tried this out, definitely go for it. These paints are very affordable, and I really like the way this looks. This might be my new go-to for inner frames. Now, the other colors that I went ahead and used here just to give some accent was the Vol.2 chrome, a couple coats of that. The reason why it looks kind of murky and dingy, if I can get that, go ahead, was I went over and I used the Citadel's shade color. This is just a wash to go over it, but I didn't do it everywhere. Over here, I kept that plain. The back elbow piece, I kept it plain, but I did go ahead and add that there. And the final color that I went ahead and used for this cranberry metallic red is a pretty sweet color. It's the Mr. Color 40th Anniversary Cranberry Pearl Red. Interesting color because in the jar, it actually shows what appears like a metal flake. If you're familiar with any of the Tamiya metallic colors, all those flakes, but I can assure you that once you paint it on, it goes on nice and flat. I am a big fan of the AOZ style kits, so I actually went ahead and painted the fingertips of the hands that color too. Once you actually see the full kit together, you'll understand how that kind of ties it all together. But I really wanted to go ahead, add that extra bit of detail. These pistons here are a little pain in the neck as far as getting the nubs and everything off, but these actually pop off. I went ahead and put some masking tape around the piston themselves, leaving this raw plastic because I didn't want that to get destroyed. The only other real modification I did would be back here, like the back of the ankles. This was a seam, and I had a little bit of an issue getting rid of it. So to break up that seam and change the angle so your eyes don't think that there's a seam there, I added 3 very thin layers of plot plate, put that on. And of course, at the bottom, I went ahead and used the Alclad chrome again. The way that I took care of these circles was actually by using some masking tape and a scribe tool. In fact, I'm going to show you that right now. Starting out, I laid down a 10mm piece of Tamiya masking tape down on the cutting mat, and using the Hasegawa Tri-Tool template set number 1, I found a circle template that was the exact same size as the shoulder frame part that I wanted masked off. So using a X-Acto blade, it was very easy to cut it out. Grabbed my tweezers, pulled it off of the cutting mat, and then was able to easily mask off that circle. And then I went ahead and just did a rough masking around the rest of the piece that I didn't want paint to get on. So there you have it. For the most part, I didn't do anything out of the box. I didn't do anything crazy. I did try these buffable paints for the first time. I highly recommend them. When I posted this initial picture on Instagram, several people responded to the question saying that they've never painted an inner frame. If you want to paint an inner frame, you're looking for a great metallic color, definitely go for these Mr. Metal colors. I'll be using iron, like I said, for the inner frame. I also started painting some of the weapons, this stainless color. A lot of people say they like Alclad. Alclad's great, but you definitely have to top coat it soon because in my experience, you can't mask on top of this straight away. You have to top coat it or the the color is going to come off. And again, that's just my experience. And please leave a comment if I'm doing something wrong with that too. But for the most part, this is what the inner frame is going to be. I think it's going to look great popping through the bits of armor and the rest of the suit. The only thing I'm a little sad about is once this is all put together, these cool subtle details and tones are going to be hidden forever. But quick little update on my last YouTube video, and if you haven't seen it, check it out. I showed you how I was getting rid of the seam lines on the sheath. And if this thing wants to zoom in, you can see that the way I got rid of the seam, this is super smooth. And again, this is just Mr. Surfacer 1000 gray. So that is all gone. Also the seam that I showed you on top of that shoulder armor, gone. So you can't hide anything from paint. You can't hide from primer. In the next video, guys, I'm going to be showing you everything else that's going to go on here. I'm going to try to make a longer video for you guys. As far as all of the armor, I might do a separate video for the weapons, and we'll get into some masking tips and tricks as well, because I did have to run into some of that. So I really hope you like this video. If you're interested in anything that you see on my cutting mat right now, minus maybe one or two tools like the God Hands, please check out my sponsor, spraygunner.com. They provided me all the paints. Everything that you see back there is available on their website for a great deal. And if you use my coupon code GEO10, not only are you saving with their already low prices, but you get another 10% off. So definitely check that out. I'd love if you guys like this content and want to support the channel. That's the easiest way to do it. Otherwise, let me know with a thumbs up, thumbs down on the video. And I hope you guys are having fun. So keep building, guys. Catch you on the next one.